Ooh, it's official. Hey, so hi everybody. I'm Charlie, as you probably know. This is Ethan. We've been chatting on Twitter. He hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, things are going well." And I'll let you introduce yourself. How are you doing this morning, Ethan?
I'm doing pretty well across the board. Life's been good. Ad accounts have been good. Big thanks to you there too.
Oh, well, thanks, man. Thanks. I try to help. I try to help.
Yeah, I mean, like you always say, help begin to win, and that's what's been happening to me. It's like I've been winning before as well, but it's just been totally different now that the whole landscape is all different. With regards to digital. And you came in pretty clutch, to be honest.
All right, I like that. I like that. I'm curious. So, like, when we're talking about things, like, what kind of scale are you at these days?
So this is kind of like the first time we've been able to put $1,000 on one campaign in like the history of any client you've worked with.
That's massive.
Yeah. Right. And
that's like almost $500,000 a year.
Yeah. And I feel like lots of agencies and other people who run these campaigns also don't do that. They rather split their campaigns up and like spend 1,000 in all different places. And it doesn't look as bad, but with the way that we do it now, it's much more easy to just do that and not, like panic at the results we're seeing, because they're actually not only quite better than before, but they also don't have to look perfect, because like on platform ROAS isn't the most important thing. It's other things are far more important that we know now, and it's just been a lot more easy and a lot more intuitive the way that our campaigns are built.
I love that. I think that's really great to hear. And I know that you've been paying attention to a lot of stuff because we've been in the DMs and stuff and chatted a couple of times. But I'm curious, like, one of the things I think is really helpful to folks is kind of understand like what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, and like with that in mind, like what were things like before you were able to get this $1,000 a day, where now that there's like blood in the streets and it's the apocalypse and like the end of days, nobody can make Facebook work. You're doing better than you ever have.
Right? Yeah. And this is even in the wake of iOS 14 and like other tracking restrictions and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean that attribution has been the best. It still isn't that great, but we're just still seeing things just work, and it's kind of, and like in the industry, it's not always enough to have things just work. You also kind of have that evidence that they are working, which is still a little bit more difficult to come by. I mean, but there isn't really any fix for that just yet, right? I mean, like, I think I just send over opt-out data, that kind of thing. So in any case, we're still doing what has to be done, which is to make these campaigns work and function and profit, despite the challenges that we might be seeing. So with regards to your before and after, before it was a bit like we'd have retargeting all over the place. We'd have like different complex windows, right? Like 14, 30, 60-day windows for retargeting, different products, like a lot of like if then type campaign things, like if they saw this, didn't click on that, well, we'll send on this campaign, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you look like that meme of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's like, yeah, exactly. Just like they go here, man, and then they go here and they eat stickers all the time, dude.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of these big brain type campaign moves, right? Different creative made for different parts of the funnel. And it would work, like there would be pretty good ROAS, like a 4, like 4x, 5, etc. Things that were pretty good face value, but like later on we'll get to that. But like the downside is obviously like massive scale wouldn't really be as possible, right? But we were kind of like working on like facade metrics, things that make you look really good, but at the same time, you don't quite know how well you'll be able to scale with that. And that was really how it was before. Lots of like confidence in retargeting, lots of reliance on stuff like that. But if you ask us about scale, we're kind of like, everyone's kind of like cold sweating when it comes to that. Like, yeah, are you gonna spend 10,000 a day or like?
You get like an 8x ROAS on $14, and you're like, well, hey, the metric looks great. How much did we make today? $9. Why are we on this phone call? Like, it cost me more time. I spent more money to get on the phone call to realize that this is a complete waste of time than I'll ever make working on this thing for a month.
Right. And that happens a lot in the industry. So like people will have like a lot of clients for like maybe $300 to $600 a day, and they don't really want to get past that 1K a day like sweet spot. And because of that, a lot of agencies would rather take on a bunch of clients, and keep them in that like $500 to $1,000 a day spend, and grow that way, as opposed to taking one client from like 0 to like 5, 10, 15 million a year and growing up that way.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know how much harder work it is to deal. First off, if somebody's paying you $300 a day, $500 a day, that also means that they want 5-10 hours of your week. Like the lower paying the client, the more of your time and energy they want of yours. Because honestly, like what I've found is the less money a client pays you, the more they are reliant on you to make or break the success of their business. And the more they need to micromanage what you're doing, because you are now such a big investment. If somebody can only afford $500 a day, for instance, like what they're doing is saying, this is all I have. And I'm going to micromanage you like an employee. And like, if you have 5 or 10 of those, that is 100, that could be 50 to 100 hours a week. Like that's more than an average work week just to talk to somebody. So then you bring in a staff and you end up like overworking kids that you're not able to really train well. And like, it's just this huge mess. And like, if the success of your business is dependent on you being able to find people that can work for really cheap and get sales folks to find other people to bring you in to set up the system, it's just like, that is an unbearable thing versus why not get 2 or 3 folks that you can get to 1,000 a day in a campaign, 2,000, 3,000. Why not get a 7-figure brand to go to 8? Because 2 or 3 of those can easily be multiple 6 figures a year in contracts, and like also dozens of hours a week back in your life, hundreds of hours a year. Okay, let's do the quick math. If you could save 20 hours a week, that's over 1,000 hours a year that you don't have to spend babysitting somebody whose business model isn't good enough for them to be able to afford you.
Right. And the thing is, I always say about that, like it feels as though the smaller paying clients, smaller paying people, very often, there's a lot more that they haven't figured out. Even if they have like product market fit, for example, there's a ton more they have not figured out yet. And often they fall into this pattern of, hiring someone, paying them what they can, and expecting you to, solve more than one problem. Right. Yeah. So you're doing an ad campaign at CRO and they're expecting you to figure out like 7 different things on top of that because their success kind of depends on you now. And that often is a lot more than you're being paid for, first off. And second, very often you can't quite solve all those things just like that. It takes like more minds might be required, more people, right? Because it might not be an area of expertise or just different reasons. So there's a lot that they haven't gotten yet, which is fine. But the fact that they're pinning that all on you for a small amount of money as well can make it much more difficult than it has to be.
Yeah. And on the other side of that coin, because I've been on both sides of that, like far too many times, is it's also a bad investment for that business owner. Yeah. Because them having to micromanage you means that now they're spending hours a day micromanaging their agency instead of learning the skills and involving their business. Like, I've worked with the folks that did, like I used to do really small stuff. Like I would only I was like, I just get 10 people to pay me $700 a month. I could easily like be making $100,000 a year. Sure. Like I'll do that or whatever. Right. And like, that was my thinking because I was making, $10 an hour. And I was just like, well, screw it. I could do this. And what I realized was the amount of time I had to spend on a conversation to explain things that they were never going to take action on. To just tell them why what I was doing, like why this thing that I felt was valuable was something that they should give a shit about. Like it got so distracting for them. And honestly, like looking back at it, I think it was great for me to learn too, because I got really good at understanding like what are the problems that they have? How do we address these needs and all of that? But the other side of it is like those business owners never were able to build up their business model because what they did is they tried to focus so much on being really good at marketing something that was an incomplete product. And I can't tell you how many tens of thousands or hundreds or maybe millions of dollars over I've spent an ungodly amount of money. I'm not going to try to tally it up, but on businesses that were just telling the world they weren't ready to open their doors. Like they weren't ready for that scale. I feel like so many people don't understand, like you're not ready to make a bunch of money right now, right? Like you have a product, not a business, right? Like it worked in this small scale, but it can't get bigger. And people's definition of success is often really bad. And what I've found with that is the person that needs to talk to me 3 times a week and they're paying me like $500 a month, that person would be way more, would benefit far more spending that time and energy learning how to do the thing than to pay somebody else. And the honest truth is like, maybe they can't learn how to do it. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth. And what that tells me is they don't have their priorities straight and they're trying to tackle 20 problems. Right. And look, going after paid media is a luxury problem. Like it amplifies an existing awesome business model. And either you can invest in it appropriately or you're not ready to invest in it. And man, that is the most brutal truth. But I can't tell you how many times I get calls from people, or I get DMs from people like, hey man, can you save my business? Or can you, like, sinking ships, or like, hey, can I pay you X amount of Z? And I'm like, you don't want to do that. Like, I literally tell them, like, this is a bad idea. I will not take your money. I will not work with you. I think you need to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe what it really looks like is, instead of making $4 or $5 million a year with 20 employees and working 80 hours a week, what you need to do is make 800 grand a year with 3 employees. Like you just got too big. You tried to solve too many problems, and that's brutal. And some folks are also at their limit, like where they can't maximize anything else, and they need to hire on. Like, they're just, and so there's the inverse of that as well, which I think the relationship is really good. But I can't tell you how many times the healthiest thing to do in the relationship is be like, we shouldn't do this. I don't want to take your money, because I think you should be working on building a business model so that you can afford to pay me way more. Yeah. Because that means that you're going to be in a place where you can take advantage of that.
And I see that a lot. I guess like with myself and with some people like you, but not enough in the industry overall. Like, I feel like it's pretty rare for people in the industry to resist taking someone's money if they can't help them. Like, they would usually say, all right, sure, let's check it out. Pay us our retainer or whatever for a month or two. And then, they'll cancel after proving that right. When, in my opinion, the best response is to just, either say, no, I won't take your money, because it's not going to, it wouldn't genuinely work out. But I mean, a little advice is still fine. But I agree with that. You shouldn't like jump head first into it if you know or have some kind of, idea that it might not work. People tend to jump into this too much. Like, there isn't that genuine care for the health of the business in the long run. And I feel like when you can find that, it's a golden, really. That's kind of what we do too. For us, like, if we give a lot of companies like a try run. We give them like a 1 month trial for free to see like if it's possible for a campaign of this to really work out. And we usually do that little run. And if it doesn't work, we tell them why, and we say, all right, we're gonna take your money. This is what happened. You think the issue is here, fix that, and then progress, take these steps, etc.
Yeah, you go on a couple of days before you like buy a house together. Yeah. Funny how that's like a healthy thing to do.
Right?
Yeah, like, because so much of this too is about the relationship, right? It's about your ability to communicate, and like, there are 20 ways of solving that problem. Is the way that I want to solve it, that I know works for me and it suits my needs, what's going to work best for you. Now, there might be 5 ways of doing it, but how can we work together in a way that doesn't amplify our stress and get in the way that we want to work? I mean, some people, I've seen the exact same business succeed in 5 different ways by, business models succeed in a million different ways. And there's not necessarily a right and wrong. There's just if you're going to use this tool, there's a way you should be using it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that, like, I've seen some businesses that can't make Facebook ads work at all, but crush with influencer. I've seen other businesses that can't make any paid media work, but like their organic is fucking bonkers, right? I've seen some people where it's all just email and podcasts, no paid media at all. And they're like, and you know what? They're all selling the exact same thing, like weight loss powder in a bag, flavored like chocolate, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, that's a business model.
Mm-hmm. I've seen businesses that this is, you might laugh at this one. I've seen businesses that have. It's weird, but they've done so much segmenting on Facebook that the algorithm, like, it bids as high as possible. It can't underbid. A support rep told us that the bidding system was like almost locked. It's stuck bidding at there's a word they use at their highest guardrails. So they'll spend like a $200 CPM for an open audience now, just because they spent so much time using all the things that you probably shouldn't be using, like interest targeting, all those other things, right? Like, they've almost spoiled their algorithm, and I find that kind of funny. I mean, a little sad, obviously, but kind of funny considering that you always talk about the opposite of that, being the way to go.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the reason I preach that as the opposite is because I was that guy. I legitimately spent at least 50, maybe $100 million with like over a dozen campaigns live at any time. There'd be like a lookalike campaign and an influencer campaign and like 14 different products. And we're spending $500 here and $2,000 there, whether it was a $5,000 a day account, $1,000 a day account, or other ones were like $30,000, $50,000 a day. And it worked. Like we were making money. But to go back to what we were saying, it worked because the business model was good, right? Like it didn't require me to do a good job. Like I could communicate and understand the data so the person in charge of the business could make better decisions and the business grew. But it had very little to do with me. Like I would quite legitimately, the vice president would go out to like get Starbucks and she'd be like, hey, who wants whatever? Or like they said, like somebody, she would always make this thing, like I was her like lunch. She would get out of the, like she made a point of leaving the office, right? She's like, I'm gonna go to Starbucks, or I'm gonna go to Chipotle or something. Who wants something? There happened to be a Chipotle right next to a Starbucks at the corner. And so I would be like, bring me back a Trente cold brew, no ice. So it's 30 ounces of just like rocket fuel. And she'd bring it back. I put in headphones. I'd like throw up like Game of Thrones or like Cheers or some stupid shit on my phone. So I just have this like distraction from my ADD. And by force of will, I would produce several $1,000s extra profit that day.
Jeez.
But if I was sick, or if it was a weekend, or I took a vacation, like I remember I went to a bachelor party in Vegas and I was gone for 3 days. I had like the world is on fire, end of days phone calls, a day and a half into being on vacation because the business tanked because I wasn't doing that every single day. It became dependent on me having to do that because the system required me to micromanage everything because I had trained my employees to basically require me to spoon feed every decision. And I had never taught them how to succeed on their own. And that is like the biggest barrier to success is having everything rely on you, you know? And so a lot of this, like get out of the interest groups and get out of the micromanagement and all this heavy segmentation and all of that is that you can win that way. And I get people that tell me all the time, I am winning this way. I'm spending, I got into this kind of argument in Instagram and I'm trying to be better, but she's like, I spent $25 million and doing this way absolutely works. I'm like, I understand that it works, but you could actually take a break. You could enjoy Thanksgiving instead of day trading your way through Black Friday. You could go on a vacation for Christmas with your family and not be tied to 3 devices because you train the machine to do the work. You could even take on more work, make more money, and not have to invest as much time. And like, that's the gift of what you should be able to do. And if you train the machine, if you teach any employee to not need you, then that employee is going to succeed regardless if you are there. And then your job is just set them up for success. It's about being a good manager. And it's a machine learning platform, right? Like every penny you spend teaches it what to do. So in their case, when you're talking about like, oh, broad targeting is getting me a $200 CPM. It's like, well, yeah, because you spent no effort training this algorithm to do anything. Like I got this new pup. Like if I just gave him a treat every time he shit in the house, I'm not going to be upset with him if I come home and it's just mountains. If I go away for the weekend and it's just 2 feet of shit in the living room, that's my fault.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And how is that any different than Facebook? Other than like, you know, this is a living, breathing animal, and I would hate for it to exist in that situation. But Facebook doesn't have any quality of life I need to deal with.
And there you go.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean that's the whole point of it existing. To be honest, like I mean, at least on the business side, like yeah, like people have faith in it as a business because they're able to use machine learning to make a good ad product, right? Same thing on TikTok, same thing on any other platforms. That's the reason why the share price goes up because people look at that and they say, all right, they have a good ML platform, machine learning works out, you know, and there's a lot of value in the fact that it can work and bring you business results without you being there and having to rely, you know, on your own decisions on a daily basis. That's a huge part of the value in the product in the first place. And I feel like people forget that Facebook has the same goals that a lot of us do. We want their ads to work, and so do they. You know?
Yeah. I mean, if the ads didn't work, Facebook wouldn't be seeing marketing dollars.
There you go.
Right? Like it's inherently in their best interest to make the ads work, which is like when we get back to like how the platform functions, where it's like all you're doing is you're paying to show content to people instead of organically posting and then it earning its reach.
Yeah.
But like if your content is shit or if it makes people unhappy, you're gonna have to pay more money and it's gonna reach less people. And
right.
like you just have to yeah, there's another person on the end of that dollar.
Yeah.
You know, so like with that in mind, like what is the architecture or like how you're setting things up now? Because it sounds like You know, like, I can't tell you how many people I'm saying are like, well, Facebook's kind of dead, and like, you can't make money, and like, they don't care about you. They're just trying to rob you of every dollar you have, like all of this stuff. And it comes from the same folks too, for what it's worth. It comes from the same folks who everybody says is like, well, they've been around forever. They've helped so many people. They've been all stuff. I'm like, I get it, but longevity doesn't mean legitimacy. Like, if you grew up in a nice neighborhood, and your dad's friend had a kid that started a business, and they hired you to basically be like, well, we have a $10 million business. My buddy has this like digital marketing thing and nobody else is there. I'm going to give him some money because whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, because they have a really good business and you're attached to it, you've been in business for a long time, but you're spending the entire day complaining about how nothing works.
There you go.
You know, like,
doesn't mean
those
you're
tend to be the same folks that have a lot of credibility and a great bit of longevity. And you know what the thing is? They're often the nicest people. Like, I'd love to have a beer with them, hang out, you know, go to the beach or whatever. Like, but I'm not going to trust them with my business success. That's not a slight against them. I don't know. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. I'm so, my feed is so wrapped up with these folks, and I've realized I used to go after them, but they took it personally. And I was just like, you're a nice person. You're just shit at business. You just happen to have successful clients that don't need you. And because you signed good clients a decade ago, everybody thinks you know what you're talking about. That all being said, because now I've had my like rant, and I apologize for that. I don't upset anybody. How are things looking like for you? Because in this time, you're actually taking your clients and providing them a lot of success and a lot of value.
Oh, for sure. So last year was a big year for us because we got on board with one client, and they were a great fit for us. As a matter of fact, I knew that before we signed. So I was kind of nurturing their CEO for about a few months before we even signed on. And eventually we signed on, and we basically almost, grew them by about 10 times in revenue, which was great. They went from about 30-ish thousand a month to about 280,000 plus a month by like November of last year, November, December.
Nice. You can do a 7-figure business.
Yeah.
Were you along for the ride and a valuable asset for them? Because yeah.
They had a pretty good product market fit, but they didn't have much direction, much idea how to run their ad campaign. So we came in, did an overhaul, did a lot of copywriting for them, worked on their conversion rates on their website, rewrote some copy, did a lot of things, with regards to the business, and kind of like we made their business communicate itself better to their buyers. So that way people can kind of understand what they're about, understand what they're getting into, and people were much more willing to, buy from this company and join them. So we helped them a lot. It was a really good, it was a good partnership, and there's a lot of work on both sides that went into it, which is great. We know it was a winning product, so we just decided that we wanted to help out with the branding and copywriting and everything along those lines. And yeah, they blew up for sure, which was nice. And then if you fast forward to like May, June this year, things dropped off a lot, after iOS 14, app tracking, transparency, all that stuff. Things dropped quite a bit. They went down to, I think, like 80-ish or 90-ish K per month, which wasn't terrible, still much better than we started. But CPA went up a lot. CPA, when we, last year, I think in the prime was about like maybe $40, $50 per purchase. That had skyrocketed. Even in like the earlier months in the year, maybe like around like April, May, it went up from about 40, 50 to about 300-ish, maybe about like high 200s per purchase. And I don't think that, it's partly because of attribution changes, right? And the ad manager missing out conversions and not being able to attribute correctly. And also because we felt like there was a bit of a, there was a bit of a drop off in terms of copywriting and in terms of just the way that the algorithm had targeted people. We decided it was probably time for us to make a strategy switch and see how we can, better utilize the platform to get these people. We were doing a lot of different things, a lot of different strategies, a lot of different tests, testing different interest groups, testing lookalikes. Lookalikes kind of died off for us post iOS 14. I think that was the one thing that worked extremely well before that almost immediately decreased in quality after the April-May issue,
Yeah.
The whole April-May change in targeting on Facebook. So then eventually I had come across you and decided, let's try this out, because we're currently looking at different things. We're currently trying to find different directions to go in to figure out the most effective strategy here. And immediately after using one of your approaches, which was mainly just coming back to dynamic creative, right? Giving them a chance to rotate, and essentially instead of picking what creative would be for what part of the funnel, we essentially let the algorithm pick that. I remember a lot. A part of what you mentioned with regards to what might be a good, a warm ad for someone, it might be a good cold ad for another person, right? Like someone might prefer a retargeting ad in some cases, and another person might see, a good prospecting ad that might be good for a different part of the funnel for them. So like, it kind of made me, think about the fact that the individual might actually have a lot of weight with regards to what piece of creative might be best for what part of funnel they're in. It might not just be up to us as marketers to dictate what the experience should be like for them, at least in this case, right? So we decided to try that and put some weight into letting the algorithm pick the creative. So that was the first thing that we made that was a bit different. And we decided to go into open audiences, just go into broad, mainly because we noticed that, well, apart from you, but mainly we also noticed that as a platform, Facebook was kind of like we can see their bias towards that. We saw that they were gradually like moving options away, right? They removed audience insights. We saw that they were making it a default to have expansion on for detailed targeting, things like that. So we kind of put that together and said, all right, it seems like if they're really trying to build the interface in a way that makes it really hard for you to use interest targeting, it might be good for us to go with it and see where that takes us. So we did that. Like, as an aside, just the sheer fact that Facebook's UI has reflected everything you've said kind of gave us a huge hint that this will make sense. So back to it, we decided to jump into that wholesale. So fully broad, dynamic creative, essentially almost nothing else. One product, one objective per campaign. And after we implemented that, our CPA was cut by half in under a week.
Nice.
We went from about like 280-ish CPA to like 120 or so, 140. Right now we're at about 150, a solid 150, but that's okay. We don't mind that because even so, we're spending like our MER, like we're spending less of our revenue on marketing. Like we're spending a smaller slice of our revenue on marketing than we were during the height of our previous campaign performance. So essentially, I think in March, I think we'd spent around 40K on Facebook campaigns within that month. And I think that had brought in about 175-ish thousand, right? As of now, that client is spending, I think, about 20,000, and they're at about 130 or something like that. So they're spending significantly less, and they're bringing in significantly more. Even if it isn't tracked, it's still a much better MER. On average, we're spending a lot less of our revenue on marketing, and still bringing in quite a bit more from that one platform. Because I think they're still running ads only on Facebook as of right now. Google as well, but very small spend there. But yeah, so even though the CPA is not like, it isn't totally beautiful in the platform, just the bigger picture of where the dollars are going and what is coming in is still very efficient, and even more so than what we were doing in the best days of that campaign. So yeah, we are going to remake some of those goals because I don't think it's going to return to post-April attribution. So we're going to remake some of those. But as of right now, we're much more free, much more easy to much easier to build campaigns and spend. And we feel a lot safer spending 1,000 to 5,000 a day now than we ever have with this client before. And I can see us doing that for everybody else pretty soon.
Yeah, I love it, man. Like, I mean, basically what you're saying, first off, mazel tov to you for getting to that point. That's awesome. And it's like, you've identified a problem, you got uncomfortable, you leaned into something, you read the room, and based on that, you made some high confidence, difficult decisions to kind of change things around entirely, but lean on your strengths. And I think that's awesome. And I love that, like, using dynamic creatives to get to that $1 million a year. I'll be honest, I don't know a single brand that I've worked with in the last 3 to 4 years where dynamic ads, whether it's DPA or dynamic creative, isn't at the core of how they got to $1 million a year ad spend, right? And how they went from 7 figures to an 8-figure brand, because it does allow the system to use all of that data. And it allows your employee to have the best opportunity for success.
For sure.
And I love that, because like that's so much of what it is. Plus then too, when you're trying to establish like what your problems are and what questions you want to solve, it's, well, if I know what it is, instead of taking a bunch of time to take a lot of guesses, just out into the wilderness, what you can do is say, I have a problem. I want to set up a dynamic ad with every possible, with my highest confidence solutions to this problem. And let me see if the machine can win with the tools that I can give it. Because that's the other thing, is if you can't solve that problem, letting the machine use the tools that it has to the greatest effect, then maybe that's not the problem that you should be solving, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I've worked with brands that are like, well, we're running 4 different offers and we're going to we're building ads on all of them, and none of the ads work, and they work for like, or maybe they work for like 4 or 5 days and then they die off. And like their question to me is, how do I make the ads work longer? And my point to them is, that's not your problem. Your problem is, which offer can you scale to $1 million a year profitably using the tools that lets Facebook be as stable and as smart as possible?
If that were me, I would essentially have 4 separate campaigns and try to find the best creative per offer for each one, and have the machine basically rotate on those.
Yeah. And then based on those, you might even optimize between the available campaigns.
There you go. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
I've seen people try to have one campaign and then squeeze in like 4 to 8 offers into that one campaign with like 1 ad or 2 ads per offer. And it's like, well, how much can you discover from that? You think you have all the answers, when in reality, the machine's job is to get you the answers.
Yeah. I like, and it's funny too, like with this, I've been doing a lot of stuff around like Black Friday and a lot of stuff around optimization. I've been trying to hammer it home. Because it's easy for me to like write. I got a sticky note on all my Black Friday things. So I was like, great, I'm gonna make a YouTube video for each one of these. Sit down here for an hour or 2 and just yell at my computer, and like it works. It works for me. But like a lot of that is people trying to chase down these different concepts and these different ideas and these different goals. And I feel like that is one thing that's been really helped me focus with a lot of folks, is when I try to talk about business objective by campaign, right? So it's like, for instance, in this case, how do my business objective is to set myself up for Black Friday being as strong as it can, or my business objective is to sell this one product, or my business objective is to make the most revenue. And the answer I get from a lot of folks is, I want to make the most revenue and get the most profit. Like, okay, got it. We understand that. We all want everything and cake. I get it. But like, what is the actual path to success? And then what are you able to actually handle? And so with that in mind, for instance, one of the things around Black Friday that I've been talking about a lot lately, especially with students and with clients, is, do you want 1,000 customers at a $20 product? Or would you rather have like 200 customers at a $100 product where the profit margin per each sale is greater? And a lot of them will default to say, well, I want that 1,000 customers. Well, that makes sense. But let me ask you 2 questions. One, can you fulfill 1,000 orders right now? Like flat out, do you have the inventory from China or wherever? Do you have the ability to make that work? Because if you don't, you might make a shit ton of money on Black Friday, and then your page score goes to like 1.5 because you can't fulfill anything. People are asking for refunds constantly, and your business, you go out of business because you can't legitimately provide a decent service.
Yeah.
Or would you rather develop a couple hundred really strong relationships with people who are willing to pay you more money than the retail price on your base offer, where you develop these long-term relationships where it can give great LTV? And the honest truth is, just like we were talking about agencies with clients, I'd much rather have 3 $5,000 a day clients than 30 $500 a day clients, because it's also less work.
And many are the opposite of that. Many would prefer to have 3,500 a day as opposed to 5,000 a day.
Yeah, and I think that just comes from a.
By the way, one thing I just want to mention real quick: the client that I'm referring to, when we had begun working with them, they actually went out of stock in, I think, the 2nd month, and they couldn't fulfill any orders for about 2 weeks or so.
I love
just
that.
Mention that. I had to throw that in there.
I love that. Like, I legitimately love it when the advertiser's problem is, we ran out of product. Yeah. It's like, You did so well that this business that hired you to basically help them make money literally can't sell anything. Like their store is empty. Like, well done to you for giving them that problem. Because that's great.
They had to do a pre-order thing for 2 weeks, and it was crazy. Some people were angry. Most of them were understanding all that, but it was chaotic.
I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
that is well done and good to you for that. Like those are the best problems. And like I remember I had a business that I worked with that had stuff in different flavors, right? Yeah. And chocolate was the biggest flavor, vanilla was the second, and like, and what we found was that we would have to just pull flavors off the website, be like not available, right? Or there'll be products where like we didn't have it in this size anymore. Like we ran out of medium, Yeah. And like I've also been a musician on tour where like we didn't get that many XXL shirts. We ordered 15 when we left Florida. Like I used to be a touring musician out of Orlando, and we go up and down the East Coast. And like by the time we left South Carolina, I ran out of all XXLs.
God.
There's nothing I can do. Hey, great. I'm glad you liked the show. I'm glad you want to give me money. I'm not prepared for that. Sorry. And like, that's just a customer that's never going to, I'm never going to see that person again. Like, I'm never going to be able to make that relationship. And so it's this mindset of being able to pick the problems that you can solve. You know what I mean? And one of those things with that, for instance, was, well, let's bring in swag that is not that we can stock. If we get 200, it goes to everybody. Right? Or if your business comes in, like, how do you solve a problem so that you don't run out of these bits and pieces? And another part of that, like supply and ability to fulfill, is also on the platform side, like data. Like if you have 5 or 10 different products, how do you realistically expect your system to be able to solve to sell all of these things? Right? Like,
yeah.
And even with that, like, instead of, I see so many people that are like trying to advertise on 20 platforms. It's like, I appreciate that you want to do that, but how good are you going to, why is your Facebook campaign suffering because you're not able to make Facebook work, or because you're also devoting time to Pinterest, TikTok, email, influencer, radio, everything else where none of them are actually proven, but you're losing everywhere. And then you're complaining that like, you're not able to keep up with the Joneses on out of context screenshots of people that are 2 years ahead of you. Like, there's no way you can, like, that's just an unhealthy way of doing things. And I love that we were talking about before about like market fit and does this business work? Like maybe what you need to do is just get really good at like your email game and your product and customer service. Like email and customer service can get you to the point where you could throw $1,000 a day at Facebook and not make any dollar, and you're going to be okay. And if you're at that place, you're going to get to $1 million a year on Facebook really fast.
For sure.
Because you don't need it to work. And if you don't need something, it tends to be much healthier. Like, my wife doesn't need me, flat out. She's a business owner.
That is great.
You know what I mean? Like, she's a business owner. She can pay her own bills. She's like emotionally secure. Like I am almost a burden in some ways. And a lot of the scenario, like we correspond, but like she doesn't need me. And as a result, like we're very healthy together. Right. And I feel like a lot of the things, if you don't need it, if you won't live and die by the success of that thing, your chance for success is much higher. And, with all of this stuff we've been talking about, I feel like that goes so much into like, let's just pick and choose the problems that we can solve. Let's pick and choose the situations where we're going to win or we're going to lose, but we're going to know. We're going to know right away. And we can make very high confidence binary decisions that do not require too much emotional investment or thought or things like that, and then rely on your team members to do their job. And I'm a big believer in you hire the right people and you trust them to do their work, right? Like I'm a band, I play music. I had an audition with the drummer yesterday, and like she's like, well, I didn't really learn like all the parts like the way they were on the record. And I'm like, great, I asked you to be in the band because I want you to do your thing. You're not like a facsimile of 20 other people. Right. And if you're going to ask Facebook to be your marketing arm or a part of the picture, you should be able to feed Facebook to do it the way that it wants. And I think that's so difficult when people come in from email or come in from Google and they try to apply those practices to Facebook and they struggle. And like, that's where interest groups come in. Interest groups were designed by Facebook to compete with Google when Facebook was a pay-per-click platform. Right. And they're just this legacy thing to compete with affinity audiences on Google. Lookalike is a ripoff of Act-alike audiences. Like all of it is just we just want to be halfway as decent as Google does. And then they realized all the data that they had, and they implemented the edge rank system when you no longer saw everything in chronological order and saw every single page. And then they adapted the Facebook Pixel, which when that got brought in, it was like the end of the world. I mean, like, I remember the panic with like Activision or Levi's or like Nissan, and we were spending $1 million a day. And then Facebook's like, actually, we're getting rid of everything. You're gonna have one pixel. And people are just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? Or like CBO comes around. I'm like, yeah, you should just spend here. Like, what do you mean I can't micro control everything? Like, how am I supposed to win?
Oh my God. I remember how many marketers made money fear mongering about CBO.
Oh,
selling
yeah.
like ebooks or like their courses on like how to, avoid the CBO apocalypse. They're gonna make it mandatory. They're gonna destroy your campaigns. And I'm like, why would they want to destroy our account? Are we not their customers?
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys.
Like,
it makes zero sense.
I mean, yeah, none of it makes any sense. Yeah, just the fear mongering around change is tough. And I will say this: there is a legitimate thing to early adopters are going to see more struggle, right? Like if you upgrade the operating system on your phone, right? Like I never upgrade my, like when my iPhone is like, hey, you can upgrade. I always wait like a little bit, right? Like I've learned that like, all right, there's gonna be some buggy shit right away. Mm-hmm. But also when you adopt things, you also get the chance to try new things and be kind of interesting and cool. Like when Reels came out, so many people made a shit ton of money and reached and built brands around the idea of like, nobody else is here. Instagram stories was the same thing when that first came out. Snapchat, I think we're seeing that right now with TikTok. And the honest truth is, my guess is TikTok, I've seen this happen with Pinterest. I've seen this happen with Snapchat. I've seen this happen with a lot of different options. One of the reasons it's so massively successful is because nobody is there. And as soon as you start getting real businesses to spend real money and really optimize towards that, what we see there is going to disappear. I mean, it reminds me of Facebook 10 years ago. I was talking to Dennis Yu about this, and he's like, he remembers 25 and 30 cent CPMs. And I was like, wow, I remember $1 and $2 CPMs. And he's like, no, man, like he's more old school than I am. Like, he was there, and
I remember $3.
Yeah.
$5, baby.
And what are we seeing on Snapchat was like $1, $2. But then eventually, like, the problem is the smartest advertisers in the world and the smartest developers of the machine learning are working for the biggest players. And the honest truth is, the staff at Google and Facebook, they're absorbing the brightest minds in the industry at a scale nobody else can compete with. And their ad product is already so mature that they're making really good decisions with super high volume of data. Yeah. Maybe TikTok is the exception to the rule. And in 3 to 5 years, you can legitimately spend $1,000 a day and project to the outcome.
Yeah.
I don't have a great amount of faith in it, but it could be the thing that beats it. But their business objective isn't the same. Like their business objective isn't, to produce the same type of reaction for advertisers, because they're monetized in other ways. And they're supported by other ways, like, it's what Chinese government money or whatever. Like, I mean, it's like this other thing we don't even know. But the unfair advantage that Google and Facebook has is their pixel is everywhere, right? Sure. Like, it's like, can you speak English? Do you have a US dollar? You can do business 85% of anywhere in the world. And that's Facebook Pixel and Google, right? Like they're on every website. They're on every device. You are logged in, even if you don't even realize it. Like, my wife doesn't have the Facebook app on her phone. Okay. And it took me a minute to teach her that, like, Facebook knows what you're doing on your device, even though you're not logged into the app, even though you don't even have the app on your phone. Yeah. Like you have Instagram, there's a Facebook Pixel on the site you're going to. Yeah. They know that, like, you're there. Like there's no privacy. And so that access to data is what makes these platforms better than anything else. And until somebody else comes along and has that omnipresence to the inventory, to the data, and to the customer experience, I don't think anyone will ever be able to compare or be able to compete. And so for that way, like us in the Facebook world, Facebook's objective is to provide us the tools to use that data in a way that will allow us to spend more money, right? Business models. They need to support us so we can support them. Yeah. It is a symbiotic relationship. And if they bring in CBO or some other thing, and the net result is every advertiser abandons Facebook overnight, like they're going to immediately undo that and bring back the hundreds of billions of dollars that they're making every year from people like you and me.
Like, who wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah. Like, why would they not do that? Like, and the other thing is too, is there's also a bit of legacy support that goes on here. Like, if you notice, like, Apple hasn't really evolved the iPhone in a long time. And people are like, well, Steve Jobs was an innovator and Tim Cook isn't, but also it's reached market maturity. You know, you also see it with, like, I have a buddy that was giving me a bunch of shit because, like, I really enjoy Madden. I get the new Madden every year because, like, I'm a Steelers fan. I got Najee Harris now. Like, I'm stoked. I'm trucking people. And he's like, but it's objectively a terrible game. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I have fun. He's like, no, all of these things are really, really bad.
Yeah.
But they're not trying to support all of that stuff because there's an experience and there's a flow. And honestly, if they wildly upgraded the game, changed the experience, added a whole bunch of things, they'll probably lose a ton of customers because they've changed what you've been programmed to expect. Same thing with, like, Grand Theft Auto. Like, their business model now is to get you to have the game and an experience that you can expect and you can enjoy, and then they just upsell you a million little things along the way.
Yeah.
Why would Facebook want to make a change that forces all the advertisers to relearn and have to do everything? And we've seen that happen a couple times. Like the AEM and the Facebook Pixel. Those are the two, basically, in the last decade. Those are the only two times I've seen a fundamental shift in the architecture. And what happens is, for the 18 months after that happens, everybody's like, this is over. This is done. I remember when the Pixel came, everybody flocked to Pinterest because the CPMs were like 30 cents and, like, you can do anything. And, like, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then, like, CBO came and everybody flocked to Snapchat.
Yep.
And then AEM comes in and iOS 14 and everybody's flocking to TikTok, and there's money to be made, but it's probably not a long-term solution. And to be fair, Google's just sitting back here collecting a shit ton of money from everybody on YouTube and search and display and everything, no matter what. And they don't really ever innovate, but they don't have to because they're already omnipresent. And I don't know, for what we're talking about, just going back to even business model, Facebook's providing you 2 or 3 products and they're going to make all of the money in the world. And then these other places that are trying to have this super niche thing that has a million options, they're going to take your dollars, but that's not a long-term business plan.
Yeah, it really isn't. What are your thoughts on the new Facebook Commerce? Platform?
I love the idea of the new Facebook Commerce platform. I remember, like, when Shop Pay was in beta, and I remember Facebook Pay, and like, you know, I remember back in the day, I did this thing with AMC called The Pitch. And a result of us being on that show, we won the episode. It was this reality show that came on after Mad Men. And the result was, for about a year, you could buy friends gift cards to, like, Starbucks and, like, 1-800-Flowers and stuff like that. And so they tried this, bringing the commerce onto the platform, and it kind of fizzled out and it burned away. And then they brought it back. Like, you can send friends money on Facebook, but I've never said to friend money. I'll use Venmo, I'll use Cash App, I'll Zelle them. Like, I'll be sitting next to my friend gambling on football in real time, and I will go out of my way to, like, open up my Chase app and, like, Zelle him cash instead of just, like, here's a Facebook thing, here's $10. I just don't. So I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really cool. The problem is adoption. Will people use it?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue. I think it'd be great. I love the idea of everything being in that one place, right? And like, I can't remember how many times I think I've seen, we're on the 3rd or 4th iteration of the idea of you can post stuff, content and video ads, and just be like, I want that. And you click it and you buy it, right?
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And so we'll see ultimately what that looks like. I think I've been a part of a lot of betas that I was stoked on, or alphas more, that just didn't pan out. Like, I don't know if you remember Canvas ads.
I think, yeah.
You can make, like, micro sites.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And I remember we invested, like, months and months to build out Canvas ad experiences for video games, where, like, you could basically open it into a microsite and you could experience it and you could play along and you could get upgrades to your character in Call of Duty and, like, other these, like, all of these things, right? These RPGs and everything. And what happened is nobody used it. Nobody engaged. It was super cool. We had the greatest, like, when somebody was on it, they would stay for like 5 or 10 minutes, but they weren't used to the, like, behavior. Like, I think the biggest win I've ever seen in this change of behavior was DPA, where people could just swipe through, see whatever they wanted, and then buy the thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see if commerce allows that to happen. I feel like ultimately it'll be tested and then implemented into the back end. So your buy now button is just the one-click buy on Amazon, but it's a shop.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's realistically what'll happen is we're not going to have this great intricate plan. That'll kind of all fall through. But on like marketplace, you'll be able to just be like buy, and it's a one tap. Are you sure? Yes. And then it's like face scan, good to go. Like it's integrated with Apple Pay, integrated with Amazon, integrated with with Shop Pay, or Facebook's own native experience, which we wrap. Like the Facebook ad, you're like, yes, I want that. Buy now or shop now or whatever. And it's immediately just a one click, and people can opt into having that one click if they want to. Yes, I would like the one click experience. You're good.
Solid. When you say Facebook Pay, it kind of reminds me of the same like Chick-fil-A versus fast food experience, where it's like, you know what Chick-fil-A is for, so you know to go there for that. Similarly, you know what Venmo's for, you know? So you wouldn't really think about Facebook Pay as much because it's just more natural to use Venmo because you know exactly what it's there for, you know?
Yeah.
And if you know that, chances are the person you're sending money to would also know that. So you wouldn't have to say Facebook Pay and they're like, what? And then you educate them on Facebook Pay and then try to get them into it. You just go Venmo because you know this person will likely already be on board and know Venmo already. You know, so I feel like that effect of the Chick-fil-A's of the world, where they do that one thing and everyone knows them for that one thing, makes it easier. It's kind of like it's more frictionless.
Yeah.
When it comes to adoption, because we all know the one thing or the few things that they do.
Yeah. And like the Venmos of the world, or Uber or Airbnbs, like they've carved out a niche. Anybody can compete with them. Like there's no reason, like I've seen the alphas of like Facebook trying to do Airbnb. Just never going to go anywhere. Or I've seen the version of like these other competitive things, or somebody brings something to market, Facebook offers to buy the company, and the company will either say yes and then they get adopted like Instagram did, or if the company's like fuck you, and then Facebook basically integrates Snapchat into Instagram, and Snapchat's market share drops dramatically, and then TikTok comes along, and then all of a sudden we have Reels. Like they can, if you don't want to play, they can just integrate into, and what'll happen is, because it's an available option where people get excited, but it's a choice where they can take that on if they want to. Like I remember everybody's like, oh, I'm not on Facebook anymore. My mom's on Facebook. And now it's like, well, my mom's got this thing. Or now we're seeing like my grandma's making Instagram Reels. Like, doesn't mean that I'm not using it.
Yep.
It's just like everybody gets to use it for their thing. And it's like, do you not have Netflix because your parents got it? Like at some point that experience becomes so integrated into your just everyday life that it doesn't matter. This friction of like being cool or being new or being discreet. Like if you want that, there's an available place for that. But Facebook isn't trying to solve for that. Facebook's trying to solve for how do we make 80% of the people happy? And we're going to be right about 80% of the time. And those numbers, $1 trillion company. Like there's no reason that their upside isn't the biggest company in the world. I mean, they are literally, Amazon and Facebook are going in, Google not as much, but they're going in and building the backbone of the infrastructure of the access to the internet. Like Amazon servers literally power 1/3 of the access to the internet in the United States. I remember in 2015, 2014, the Amazon server went down in like New York. And what it meant was our ad agency in LA that went through a VPN through New York, nobody could get online. Like the internet didn't work. There was no internet for anyone.
Wow.
And I just went home. And it was like the only day of any of the world agency life where like, I legitimately couldn't get an email. Like nobody could reach me. Nobody could do anything. Like I was getting texts from people and just like, yeah, sorry, I can't log in. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, I'm legally not allowed to access this outside the VPN because of like privacy concerns. And that VPN is sitting on a network that Amazon built and their server went down. We're done. That's it. And so my point to all of that is they're thinking so much bigger and beyond everything. They're not worried about the little fine points. Like TikTok could grow 10x and Facebook won't even give a shit. They already stole the best thing that they have. They've already monetized it. They've already adopted it. They made it available for everyone. TikTok probably benefits because Facebook ripped them off because people got more used to the culture. Yeah. And then what happened? We saw shorts on YouTube, idea pins on Pinterest, which by the way, if you're making a TikTok or an Instagram reel, there's now this new thing on Pinterest called idea pins. You can just straight up upload the thing. Yeah, I think they have. I'm getting like 5,000 impressions a day, and like I just upload like 12 of my Instagram reels. I'm going back my entire Instagram reel catalog, and like in bed at like 10:30 at night, I'm uploading like a dozen, and just it's gonna take me a month to get through everything. But as a result, like more SEO, and maybe I'll get a customer. Who knows? Yeah, I think Twitter had fleets for a while, and they took yeah, but they had that for a little while, and yeah, you're right. Like everything
they all use the same features very often, and I think the benefit too, like you said, TikTok benefits from Reels and vice versa. Yeah, it's true. For
Yeah,
sure.
Clubhouse got adopted into Twitter Spaces, you know, and all of these things, right? And then like Zoom, and then like there's the premium versions of YouTube access. There's like premium, like the Patreon model got adopted by Twitter for like Twitter Premium, and we'll see what happens there. And you know, there's the whole thing with like OnlyFans, like taking pornography off, and so everybody was doomed. And it's like at some point you should just build your own website and take it and sort of Stripe account or PayPal and just not be reliant on these platforms. But you know, people may or may not, and that's a complete aside. But I think ultimately, what we've talking about here is more and more proof that Facebook's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to fail. They're not MySpace. They're Google. They're cable television. Or maybe Google is cable television and Facebook is Netflix.
Yeah,
it's going to be there forever. Like are we legitimately going to see 150 million people in the United States just abandon Facebook?
No,
or something else? And like, as long as there's going to be social media, Facebook is big enough to adopt anything that, and they're either going to buy the competitor or they're going to adopt it and they're going to monetize it. So with that in mind, get good at Facebook ads, and you'll have a job basically forever. And Facebook is going to do the best that they can to make that accessible, because the absolute worst case scenario, say Facebook ads become as expensive as television.
Ooh, scary.
It's scary. But in the days of television, thousands and thousands of people had full-time jobs making six figures, or like an entire infrastructure and industry existed around that. And the great thing is Facebook, I don't think they'll ever take away like the boost button. I don't think they'll require you to spend $10,000 to have a conversation. No way. Like if you have a good business model and all you need is really good creative to get somebody to go to your website, and then your website does all the heavy lifting, you can be in business, you know, and however, whatever the internet looks like 10 years from now, I'm sure like that'll still be an option. So I don't know, like, I think we've gone around a whole lot of things, but I love the idea of trusting this machine to do its job. And if you're good at it, your objective is to make it, empower it to do its job as good as possible. Stay out of the way of it, give it the best tools for success, and then work on your business plan and with your partners so that your model allows you to have greater and greater levels of inefficiency, because we're still, the attention is still underpriced. Like the fact is anybody can go into Facebook and make money today. And until that becomes way more of a coin flip, or what the odds are against you, I would still say it's underpriced. Like, you know, you have better odds of making money on Facebook than you do going to Vegas at scale, you know? And until that happens, until that flips, the attention is underpriced. And when that does flip, Facebook will turn that switch. Like their CPM model is completely arbitrary, you know? So like, there's no reason that they can be like, you know what? We're just going to discount CPMs by 20%. We're going to make everybody's experience worse.
Right?
They can do that. And so it's just, there's all these market forces. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff at play. But I know we've also been talking way longer than I thought that like maybe you signed up for. So I apologize.
It's okay. I heard we both enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. I never get to like, it's one of the things about media buying is that it's a really like kind of lonely world.
Yeah.
And,
really.
And one of the things I'm really trying to do is build community around this, because there's a business model of lack of access to information. People have this paywall to eventually see something that's a solution to some fear mongering. And if you're just a decent person, it happens to also be better than those people. And you can communicate with other folks that don't give a shit about what the crazy person on the street corner says. There's an entire world out there for all of us to experience and be happy with. If you got something to like, not saying that you're here to promote something, this isn't some like great PR stuff. We're just like, hey man, let's chat. But like, if I can help you in that way, like, let me know, like what,
for sure.
Other people.
I would say easiest way would be on Twitter, twitter.com/EANorv, EANORV. That's my like handle for everywhere. And the agency is just coronationproject.com. So it's pretty easy to find, but Twitter should be one of your most easiest places to find me. Love
it, man. Well, hey, thank you so much, dude. I want to chat with you some more after this as well, just because this was a great get to know you, but I'm interested in some more of the deep stuff, and maybe we'll find a way to just slide into the DMs. That sounds, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there. We're good. We're good. I'm gonna go walk this
All
baby
right.
puppy.
Anytime.
Thank you so
Anytime,
much,
Joel.
man. I really appreciate
You're
it. I'll talk
welcome.
to you later, man.
For sure. Talk to
Bye,
you soon.
buddy.
Man.
See you.